Hey, it's Romania Black. And yeah, this was a pre-open Dr. Pepper, but I didn't feel like wasting a new can for Steins Gate, episode 18. So yeah, we have altered world lines again. We're closer to the singularity, just closer to crossing the barrier of 1%. We're at like 45 now, so there's that. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to see what's gonna go down. I'm gonna be honest with you though. As excited as I am to see what's gonna happen, the idea of what we could possibly do with Ruka, it unnerves me to an uncomfortable degree. But we're gonna get through it. We're going to get through it. I don't have any comments that I can really talk about. The mods had to flag several because they had spoilers, hints, and clues at future episodes. So I want to experience it all blind. So that's why. So if I just hearted your comment or didn't respond to it, it's because there was a potential spoiler, hint, or clue of things that I will find out later on in the series. So there you go. But I do want to talk real briefly about the dub. J. Michael Tatum was so good. Episode 17, J. Michael Tatum was so good. When he like tells Kurisu on the rooftop and he's like, help me. And Kurisu's voice actress was amazing when she's like, well, it must have been horrible. And that he's been time leaping all this time. It was just so good. Loved it. I loved that scene of them together. It was fantastic. And then at the very end of the episode when Feyris is all over Ocarine and Ocarine's just trying to check her and be like, hey, are you okay? Like after everything's gone on, even though she's forgotten most of it, right? Kurisu calls him out and she's like, quit being perverted. And Mayushi in the dub's like, this is just camaraderie. It's kind of like Mayuri, even though it's this big harem set up from the beginning, Mayuri knows that he doesn't have any romantic interest in any of those other women. He's just it's just camaraderie. It's just camaraderie. I'm going to start using that now. It's just camaraderie. But yeah, so I don't have anything else to note with this episode. I'm just ready to dive in and see what happens in episode 18. So before I start though, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. If you're not a patron, you can go check out my Patreon, see all the tiers, see if any of them spark your interest. And if you can't support me on Patreon, please make sure to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel so you can see Steins Gate every Saturday. If you're not subscribed, what you all doing? So, but over on Patreon, the philanthropy tier, they get a special shout out in all of my videos. So I want to give a shout out over to Be Happy, to Alex Cornejo, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, to Icho, to Eric, to Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, L. Freya, Lyndon Murphy, Willie Morris, as well as Translucent Min, Sunspots Shimoyama, Daniel James, Diana Williams, Nicholas Sean, and Rose Jennison, as well as James N., who is supporting the commission tier as well this time and place. So thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, that's what I got. I'm a little bit nervous about this episode, not gonna lie, because of just the content that's coming with it. We're gonna find out what happens in this one. So anyway, we're not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive right into episode 18. It's so weird that we're entering the final act of Steins Gate, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. This might be the first episode in a long time in most of the series that I don't think we need Whiteboard Kun for it. I don't know how long the discussion will be for this episode, honestly, because of all the episodes of Steins Gate, this one is it felt the most straightforward in what was going on and what we were trying to accomplish. It's also probably one of the most somber episodes, and it definitely takes a joke from the first, of the series and makes it suddenly have this very bittersweet, very sad recontextualization. The whole monologue that we all laughed at when he's like, Ruka, delicate as a flower, more feminine than a woman, a dude, is so funny, in hindsight. And now looking back, it's like, ooh, well, about that. So yeah, I do want to talk about I debated whether to bring Whiteboard Kun out for this part, but I think we can talk through it about the two possibilities with Ruka, honestly, and the situation. Because I remember back when we were reviewing Ruka and their conversations about whether or not they are transgender or not in this series, there was a discussion about using the boku phrasing in when they're referring to themselves. And what I know about Japanese, I think of a character from Kuroko's Basketball. There's a character in Kuroko's Basketball who is basically not transgender, but they are basically non-binary in that series, is the best way I can describe it. I don't think Japan really has, I don't know if they have a wording for non-binary, but in that series, they refer to themselves in a feminine pronoun in Kuroko's Basketball, identifying that they want to be referred to in the feminine context. So it is more transgender in that sense. They are asking to be called with a feminine pronoun. Whereas in this series, Ruka doesn't really do that. They use boku. So it's them referring to themselves still in a masculine tone. But there's two ways of looking at it, and we're going to talk about that in this. And they're both heartbreaking in their own ways. So if you're somebody that's part of the queer community, chime in down below, because even though I am part of that little A in the LGBTQA plus scenario, I'm not someone that I would identify myself as a cisgender AFAB person, right? I would identify myself as a female cisgendered woman, that I'm not exactly licensed to speak for transgender people, so I'm not going to try to. I'm just going to try to portray how I interpret the scenes. And if you are someone that can ascribe to some of those things, you can comment down below and add your own context to it. So I don't want to speak out of turn and speak for anyone in particular, but I do want to make note. I thought of Summer Hikaru died with the cicada that starts out the episode, but also what cicadas represent in transformation and new beginnings. We kind of regress from that back to how it was before. So I thought that symbolism was pretty apt. Also, whenever I see the cicada, I think of the shrine. It's just like we've been conditioned to have this imagery connect us to a place. And so it's funny to see that kind of pop up again, right? But this opening where Okarin just brings up being like, it's not handled delicately at all. No, where he says, you used to be a guy. And there are two ways of looking at this scenario, and we might as well just talk about them now. The scenario that is interesting to me is this concept of Ruka and their identity being trans as female. So the question, I think that we have to look back at the very beginning world line, right? The very beginning in the OG world line, which is where Whiteboard could have came in to help me with this. But you know what? He's taking the Saturday off. We're probably going to need him for the next couple episodes because we're getting closer to the end. So we're just going to let him take a breather for this one. But at the very beginning, Ruka clearly liked Okarin, right? Ruka clearly liked Okarin. And we find out in this episode the very first encounter that they had, and then the subsequent encounters afterwards. So at the very beginning of the OG timeline, Ruka clearly had a crush on Okarin, but was like, I'm your pupil, I'm your student, and I'm learning all of these things, right? What we get in the anime as the story moves forward is Ruka saying that they wish they had been born a woman, right? We don't really get the context of that. We just get that Ruka wants to be born as a woman. And so until we get to this episode, you think, okay, Ruka is transgender. Ruka wants to be a woman. They feel uncomfortable in their skin. That is something a lot of people can relate to. The idea of wanting to transform yourself to be, the idea that you have the opportunity to become what you've wanted to be your entire existence is so tempting and palatable. And it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So up until this episode, we think, okay, Ruka has been wanting to be have their sex represent their identity, right? That gender dysmorphia has been happening for Ruka, and they just want their sex to represent their identity. That seems seems logical, seems right. It's the one of all the D-mails that were sent, to me, this is the one that is the most personal and the hardest. I know we still have Moeka to deal with in that lottery one, but this is the one to me that's like, I mean, Suzuha's up there. Suzuha's up there because it affects a lot of things. But then you have Feyris. Feyris is a hard D-mail to get through because it's her dad's life, essentially, that's in the balance. But here, there's just something about this one that feels really personal. It feels like the idea that this isn't changing, it's not changing something that's going to alter a lot of events. Like Feyris's dad living altered an entire city from the ground up, which is crazy. But this oddly feels more important because it feels simultaneously more important because it's affecting Ruka's actual identity, persona, everything. But it also feels like the least consequential because it's only affecting Ruka, if that makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, while it's not affecting everybody else, it's still so important. So it's such a, But getting back to what we're talking about, Ruka decided that they told Ocarine they wanted to be born female. That's why the original D-mail was sent, to try to get the mom on the pager to not eat as much meat, to eat more meat instead of veggies. One of the two, so that Ruka would be born female, right? And then throughout the world lines since, if we go back and look at that, Ruka does not like being misgendered. They get really offended by that. They get really upset about this, which as you would, right? And basically, and from the anime's perspective up until this point, you would think, okay, well, Ruka doesn't want to be misgendered. Ruka is very upset because Ocarine is not respecting their identity, how their gender is now, their sex, everything else. And so I've been watching this series looking at Ruka as, in this anime, as a transgender woman, right? And then we get to this episode and we get to the point about the crush, and it kind of recontextualizes it in a little different way. So this is called FRACTAL ANDROGYNOUS is what this episode is called. I also like that as the episode title comes into play, it gets more crisp and you can read it a little bit better. That part's fun. Love that. So yeah, FRACTAL ANDROGYNOUS is what this episode is called. So yeah. But anyway, he's like, this is what I would prefer. And she's like, well, it looks like you still have enough in you to joke around. So yeah, one interesting part about this episode, especially towards the beginning, is that I like Mayuri getting mad at Ocarine. Again, I'm still baffled in some respects that Ocarine hug Mayuri. I'm like, this woman has died in front of you how many times now? That's kind of the scary thing about it, is that it's to the point where he's so hell-bent on saving Mayuri, and he thinks that it's something he can do. And so because he thinks it's within the realm of possibility now, because he thinks that he's not actively, like, he's like, oh, she'll be fine. I've got this. I'm going to speed run, get these D-mails taken care of. We're going to prevent this from happening. It'll be all right. But at the same time, he's forgetting that she's right in front of you right now. You have all these opportunities. Hug her. Be near her. Ah! I'm like, in the back of my mind, it is hitting me. I'm like, what if you do all of these things? What if you erase all the D-mails? You undo all of this, transformative things that you've done. And there are ways to look at it, right? I mean, you could look at Feyris asking and trying to save her dad as like playing God and being like, oh, she did something bad and now we've undone it. You could look at it that way, I suppose. You could look at Ruka changing their gender and their biological sex as something they shouldn't have done. And we'll talk about that when we get to the final scene with Ruka's confession to Ocarine. You for sure, you want to view it that way? Sure. But I'm like, at the end of the day, after they do all of this, what if? Because Ocarine is operating under this mentality that if he undoes all of the things they did to change the world line, then they can get the IBN 5100. Then their assumption is, if we get the IBN 5100, we can hack into CERN, we can prevent them from finding the D-mail that led them to the lab, which led to Mayuri's death. They're like, if we undo all of that, we will prevent Mayuri's death. And that may work, but what if the clock stopping? What if the sands of the hourglass stopping? What if Mayuri is destined to die and it has nothing in the end to do with CERN? Because they even make a point of saying, even when CERN didn't show up, she died in other ways, whether it was falling down the stairs or getting hit by a car or something. CERN wasn't directly involved in some of those deaths. Or Moika and her thugs weren't involved in some of those deaths. And Ocarina even says that. So it's like, the moment that came out, I was like, well, but what if Mayuri's just meant to die and the universe is just, because you've changed the world lines, the universe is making it add up to where that happens. So what if he does all of this? He changes everything and then it doesn't matter. And she still dies. Then what happens? Well, then he goes crazy. But then what happens? That's my fear, is that we're going to get to that point. But it's interesting to see Mayuri get onto him. I love that Mayuri is so protective of Ruka. Mayuri has really only gotten mad twice. One with this whole situation with Ruka, and one when Ocarine was trying to use the time leap machine and she was like, no. The one thing that kind of stinks about this is that Ocarine is not able to keep track of what he's told Kurisu at what world line, because he goes back and he had told Kurisu all this. They'd come up with this plan to undo the D-mails, but then that version of Kurisu forgot for this current version of Kurisu. So this current version of Kurisu doesn't know about the D-mail plan, and that's why he has to drag her away. Also, you think that it's just, again, metaphorically speaking, him dragging Kurisu away from Mayuri, what he's doing with the time machine, what he's doing with the D-mails, what he's doing with the time leap machine is doing exactly what Mayuri told Ferris back like in episode 11 or episode 12. She was like, he's getting further and further away from me. And in this episode, it literally happens. He literally goes on a date, distances himself from Mayuri, takes Kurisu to the roof to explain the plan, distances himself from Mayuri. He's doing exactly what she said he would. And I'm like, my dude, you should be around her this whole time. But obviously he can't because of the plan. It's wild. I really thought Kurisu was going to hit him with the book. I thought that's what was going to happen, but it did not. She resisted from the book. So he explains what's going on. And then it was a little bit of a moment when Kurisu was like, oh, so Ruka being a guy like Daru? And they were like, oh, not like Daru. And she's like, oh, thank God. I was like, damn, way to shame Daru, Kurisu. Holy cow. Like, also, is it me, or maybe because I've been watching the dub, but does Daru's voice sound more like goofier than usual? I felt like it was maybe more goofier than usual, but then again, he is talking about like hentai stuff in this episode, so maybe that's just the cadence his voice takes whenever he's not talking about like tech stuff. Maybe it's just a different cadence for that. And so one thing I do appreciate in this scene with Kurisu and Ocarine outside when they're discussing like what to do with the D-mail is I appreciate that when Kurisu's like, well, why don't you just get the pager number and undo it and just not tell Ruka? Just do it without telling them. And I do appreciate that Okarine's like, even if they're going to forget, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that behind their back and not talking to them. So even though we have this like kind of uncomfortable conversation later, it is good to know that Ocarine is at least caring about his friends. He doesn't want to just do something and not have them know it. And I mean, they're going to forget anyway, but that still allows, he's the one that's going to remember. He's going to remember. So it's his conscience on the line. And he's like, no, because I don't want to have to remember that I did this without telling them. I would feel more responsible to tell her the truth than to resort to cheap trickery. It's interesting because Ferris in the English dub refers to him as like her knight in shining armor. And it's like, yeah, that responsibility would end up making her cry, remember? And he's like, yeah, well, you know. So then, yeah, Ruka's like, okay. Ruka agrees to it. She's like, that. Oh, well, she says that's so mean. I can't believe you say such mean things to me. And I like Kurisu's eye twitching if you jinx things for her. And he's like, jinxed? So what Kurisu gets in this moment is saying, like, you told her that you wanted her to go back to being a boy, which Kurisu's like, you basically rejected and said you didn't have any feelings for her, because if you had feelings for her, you would want her to stay as a woman. and not go back to being a man because you don't like men. So this, you asking Ruka to go back to being a man is basically telling Ruka that you're not interested in them whatsoever. It's basically turning them down, just finding it and saying it in another way. And Green's like, I never thought of that. It's like, no, you did not, sir. I think one thing to notice and note throughout all of this is that even though Ocarine is now in like a dating sim game for this part of the series, he's not really interested in, I've never thought he was interested in Ruka or Faris at all. Mayuri is like a sister to him. Kurisu is like the one he has interest that could be there, right? But we've talked about where that could go. So yeah, it's interesting because he looks back at the text there and is like, could you come back to the shrine? So yeah, so this is when Ruka confronts him and says, I have a favor to ask. And he's like, a favor? I believe what you said. And I would agree to give you the mom's number to the pager in exchange for turning back into a boy, that you be my boyfriend for the day. So this is where it all comes out. So Ruka believing, because we've established that Faris started to get memories from the One World line echoing into this one. Now, that didn't happen till, Ocarine really started to project and bring back those memories. Did that happen with with Ruka the moment that Ocarine started talking about it? Has it been happening before? We don't know. We don't know exactly. I do think it's interesting, before we dive into this, that Ruka never really cosplayed with Mayuri after the fact here, even though when you went back, Ruka's like, oh, cosplay's not my thing. That's good to know. I'm glad that they kept that consistent throughout this. But Ocarine's like, what? Be your boyfriend? And the thing is, Ocarine, even when Ocarine said that Ruka was cute, or would be cute if they were a girl, quote unquote, I don't think Ocarine was ever sexually or romantically attracted to them. I think they're just like, oh, they were cute. And this is, very, I don't know if I should say homophobic or transphobic, but it's a bit phobic either way, for Ocarine to be like, what a waste for them to be a guy when they're beautiful like a girl. I'm like, that's a little offensive is the word for it. That's a bit offensive. But he says it anyway. But I don't feel like, regardless of if Ruka stayed a girl, regardless of if Ruka was a boy, Ocarine was not going to be romantically attracted to them either way. Like he says in the episode, it does not matter. He's like, I kind of have an attraction to science more than I do people. And so you just, it is a little bit offensive for them to say that it's a waste for them not to be a girl when they look rather feminine, but I don't think anything that Ruka did was going to change whether or not Ocarine would date them. So instead they were like, I'm going to take advantage. And Ocarine blushing is literally being like, well, nobody's really ever done this before. Also, the fact that it's called the May Queen and Neon Squared. Little things in the butterfly effect are changing. So yeah. So it's literally at this part in the episode that we have a couple things become observant. One, Faris has amazing ears and can hear not just the cat ears in their costume, they can hear all sorts of things and have a great hearing in this restaurant, in this maid cafe. Also, two, both Ocarine and Kurisu liking iced coffee. Good for them. But three, Ocarine and Kurisu are literally the blind leading the blind. Neither of them have experience. They're both mad scientist elects. So I do kind of love that part of it, when them trying to figure out what to do. But yeah, it's very clear in this episode that Kurisu likes Ocarine, and she's just like, I feel like Kurisu at one point in the episode, she just doesn't want Ocarine to go on the date because she likes him, and she's worried that something might happen between Ocarine and Ruka. And then when it becomes apparent that's not going to happen, then Kurisu's like, never mind, let's forget about it. He's all good. We've got this handled. But yeah, they decide to ask Daru for help, which all he knows is hentai games. But yeah, he sounded a lot goofier in this episode. Also, in the back of my mind, I know Ocarine's not thinking about it right now, but in the back of my mind, all I can think about is the fact that Daru's daughter has died and he has no idea. And that's plaguing me this entire time, so there's that. So, they get on Google and Ocarine's trying to look up date ideas. Like, where do I go? Luckily, none of the date ideas that Okarin is able to find online, none of them sounded like him. So oddly enough, them going to the cafe and then just walking around the town, it felt very Doctor Who. Like, what would Doctor Who do on a date? And other than going to the Towers of Beryllium, this seemed like something that like the 10th Doctor would do, probably. But yeah, so he's like, what do we do? I don't know what to do for a date. And he's like, I'll have you know, the great Hoen Kiyoma with his 170 IQ, which is the same as Isaac Newton's, I might add, finds research more interesting than girls. And there we have it. Okarin is more interested in research and science than women. There we go. And Kurisu's like, you're clearly a virgin. Thank you very much. And I like that this ends up with her getting embarrassed by admitting that she's a virgin as well. He's like, well, do you have as much dating experience as I do? This back and forth was really fun. He's like, see, you're so absorbed in your studying your research. Want to point out the dating hentai that, two things. One, the dating hentai that Daru is playing reminds me of Psychopaths, as does Okarin's outfit for the date. That's all I can say. Two, if you notice it, the Coca-Cola can by the computer is the same that he requested from Okarin back in the satellite. So that's super interesting. So from there, we get Okarin and deciding to go on his date. And I want to go back to see what does he say there after he gets his little drink-a-link there. I like he has the pinky up for that. That's real good. He's like, well, I'm okay in like the hygiene department. A lab coat is so hygienic. I was like, I kept thinking he was going to shave. I kept thinking he was going to shave his stubble, but he did not do that. And so it's like the same holds true when choosing where to dine. Don't feel compelled to select the overly expensive restaurant. Choose somewhere you're familiar with. Well, and he's like, this won't do. I felt so bad. The woman that Kurisu's like, yeah, this place is like a dump. The woman making the curry was like, you eat here every day and you don't tip. She was like, oh, I know in Japan they don't tip. So I don't want somebody to be like, actually, they don't tip in Japan. I know. So yeah. So then it's like, you could go to the Maid Queen. She's like, who would go to a maid cafe on the first date? And he's like, well, what about a weapon shop? Why are you weapon shopping on a date? He's like, you're just reading straight from a dating manual. Quit acting so high and mighty, you American virgin. I like that Daru suggests the hentai magazine, but it's like, no, that's not going to work. I am glad that Okarin gets onto him, though, about it, too. And then Daru's like, well, fine, I'll just leave then. I don't know if there's any significance to the, like, exact magazine that Daru's looking at, but he does talk about, like, there is one moment where Daru talks about, like, the dating advice and what those dates are like. He's like, well, there's a hentai game strategy guy. He's like, well, so what? They have dates in hentai games. He's like, they hold hands, and holding hands and stuff is totally erotic, you know? Will say, I have watched several anime and Donmai where hand-holding is like some of the... You saw the hand-holding a few episodes ago, like episode 14. That hand-holding, excuse me, that was pretty erotic. I must say so myself. Walking arm in arm with your elbow touching your boob, that's hot. And then you kiss and embrace at the end of the date. The hot damn translation was so bizarre. But yeah, it's like, so then we have Daru with the two ladies. Screw you real lifers. And I like Okarin and Kurisu are like, it's interesting because the more the more Kurisu and Okarin are trying to change the past to affect the present, to affect the future, to get the IBM machine. The more they are doing that, it's like Okarin and Kurisu are becoming closer and closer, but everyone else around them is getting a little bit more distant from them. It's interesting. And I'm like, I don't want to think about the consequences. Okarin has head down a lot in this episode, which was really sad. And I also like the Kurisu went out and she's like, quit your grumbling, put this on. Which literally was just a shirt and a tie and a jacket. She's like, take the tags off so you can't take it back. He really does look like a detective. He honestly, other than Psychopaths, he looks like he'd be the main character of Monster. Which, you know, is kind of fitting. So that's fun. Also, I was wrong about the handkerchief. I was like, oh, I thought the handkerchief was like in a bathroom or something, but in fact you use it to put down for a bench for a lady. That's really cool. So yeah, that's really cute. I like that. I like that Ocarina has no clue what to do. I mean, this is like a 19-year-old that's never gone on dates, and there's something about the yellow kind, because what does he say there? What does he say there about that? He asks like, oh, this blue handkerchief. He's like, is this, I'm waiting for you even after all this time. And she says that's the yellow one. Or at least it's what her romantic date book has told her. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, Ocarine being the 19-year-old that does not know how to date and has never dated is very relatable, especially for a guy that's just been devoting himself to being a mad scientist. So I really liked this scene. It was really cute of her helping him get ready. Nice. But yeah, they just keep getting closer, and then he waits for Ruka to go on the date. I do like the little point where Ruka like checks their shoulders to make sure they're good to go for it. But one thing I will give Ocarine credit for is that as he's super nervous and doesn't know what to do in the date, I liked at the end of the episode, he went back and redid the date the way that he would want to do it. I liked that. And at that point, Kurisu is like, okay, we don't have to watch him anymore. We know he's back to normal. It's going to be okay. I think Kurisu was not necessarily following Ocarine and Ruka around out of jealousy necessarily. I think that there's like a shade of it there, but I think it was more because she knew Ocarine wasn't comfortable. He wasn't doing like he normally does for this date, and she was probably worried for both him doing something weird and also for Ruka and how it would affect them. So I liked that he went back at the end and redid the date the way that he normally would have wanted to do it. Like, at least he fixed that, right? Because he doesn't want to, like, leave this world line with Ruka having a bad experience entirely. So, yeah, we're at that damn bridge where everything happens, you know? And then they walk around. It is weird to see Ocarine not in the coat. It is weird. Also, Ocarine, like, protecting her and, like, saving her from getting hit by the car and stuff is a little bit, the car nearly hitting him felt a little bit like world lines trying to correct themselves. Also, why was that car just squealing down the alleyway? What? It was just kind of weird. But yeah, so then he stops, and somebody in a maid outfit, I thought that was Mayuri at first, but it was not, gets tripped. And then the maid helps to pick him up and offers the tissue pack for the maid cafe. I guess they're not, of any consequence, but the fact that we didn't see the maid's face was weird to me. We didn't see the maid's face. That was odd. Anybody else feel odd about that? I thought it was Mayuri, but then we saw Mayuri later in the following scene, so curious. So we go to Voluspa, the cafe. I like that the cafe also has like a 2F under it. I don't know if that's an address, but still we had neon squared, which is a 2, and then this 2, like this is the second version. But yeah, the date is super awkward. Like, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to say to Ruka, and instead is like, the thing that makes this so uncomfortable, I think, is because one, Ocarine does not actually like Ruka, right? Which we're going to talk about later on with the confession. He doesn't actually like Ruka. But the other thing that's awkward is Ocarine is just doing this not because they're, it's more than just, I know Ruka requested it, but it's a favor, but Ocarine just really wants to save Mayuri. So this is all just a formality. There's not even really, Ocarine can't really get into it even because it's just like, okay, let's check this off and get this done with so we can get the D-mail sent. And that's kind of like really sad in a lot of ways. So yeah. So he ends up, I like that he starts to give the little factoids about Japan and August 14th being the patent day. Like when he's himself, I love that they make the joke of where is he taking the conversation. But when he's himself, it's like there's a little charm there. But when he doesn't know what to do, it's so awkward. And then they just walk around. And Mayuri, this part here is what got me. Ruka was on a date with a guy, but Mayuri only saw the back of them. Mayuri didn't see the front to see that it was Ocarine. And when Mayuri's like, well, that wasn't you, I was like, it's just like one more layer of Mayuri and Ocarine being separated. One more layer of that. And I'm like, oh my God. It was crazy, right? It was crazy. And so it just adds to that distancing between Ocarine and Mayuri. But yeah, and then what's funny is they keep going through all the different places that we've been to as the audience. We've been following these characters around this entire damn city for 19 episodes. So every little spot they go through, I'm like, oh, I know where that is. Know where that is. Know where that underpass is. Like, we've been through these different places over and over again. I'm assuming in the visual novel, there were a lot of moments in this episode that, knowing this is originally a visual novel, I was imagining going, okay, I could see what the screen would look like with the text under it as you move from place to place. It kind of had a visual feel like that. I could definitely see it. So then Ruka says and talks about the first time that they met, saying, like, are you having fun on this date or not? A bunch of men with cameras suddenly overwhelmed me, but you showed up to save the day, remember? And so then I like that in the background it's the green light, meaning that we can move forward with this. So I guess what it appears is that maybe these guys with the cameras were like tourists trying to take pictures of Ruka, and that's where that came from, I guess. I suppose. And then Ocarine scared them off because they ran away after that. I love the way that Ocarine looks in that moment where Ruka says thank you. Where he's just like mean mugging. One of the best shots of Ocarine this whole damn series. I love that shot. And then Ruka says there, I'm sorry though. And he's like, what are you apologizing for? Saying, well, for being a boy, even though I look this way. And honestly, here's the thing. We're going to go back to it now. Ruka apologizes saying, oh, you saved me. This came out in 2010 or 2011. One of the 2 years. And I'm like, the times have changed, but not enough for me, honestly. So, because there's a lot of transphobia currently, and I kind of hate it. But it's just, I feel really sad watching this scene because what Ruka is implying is, oh, you were saving me thinking you were saving a damsel in distress when I'm actually a guy. And thus you probably, what Ruka is saying is you probably wouldn't have saved me if I had been a boy and you knew that. And what I love about the moment is that Ocarine is like, oh, well, Ocarine's like, well, it wouldn't have mattered. Because Ocarine sees how distressed Ruka is and says it makes no difference whether you're a boy or a girl. Ocarine, is kind-hearted enough to realize that they're really sad. And he's like, oh, it wouldn't have mattered if you were a boy or a girl. He's like, none of that matters. And he says it with like his like, ha 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 voice. The words you spoke made me so happy. And then Ocarine's like, oh, well, those words are what made me like you. So the thing is, whenever Ruka first says, when they first confess to Ocarine, because Ocarine's like, why do you want me to go on a date with you? Why is this a thing? And they're like, well, because I like you. And Ocarine's like, in that moment, the thing that kind of saves the episode for me a little bit, even though I was anticipating it being uncomfortable, which it was, is that Ocarine is not really sexually or romantically attracted to anybody right now. Not even Kurisu, even though Kurisu is like waving the banner and flag as hard as she can. They're doing that. So in that moment, I can't be insanely mad at Ocarine because he didn't even realize what he was doing. He wasn't like, oh, no homo, like all that. He wasn't doing that. In the moment, he says, back when they first met, he was like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. I still would have stood up for you. I still would have defended you. I still would have tried to save you in that moment because I saw you were in distress. And that's what made Ruka like them. When Ruka confesses to Ocarine, Ocarine kind of has the reaction of, oh, I never thought that you were into me. Ha! Ah! And has a moment of confusion of, which, to be honest, to give Ocarine a little devil's advocacy, I think even if Ferris last episode had been like, well, I like you in the hotel room, I think he would have reacted the same way. And she's a woman. So, but the sad part is that in that moment, Ruka met Ocarine and realized they liked him. It was because he wasn't judging them because they were male or because they were biologically male in that moment. So that's leading us to get to this other conversation. He's like, well, none of that matters, huh? And then he's like, now wait a second. It's like, isn't that a memory from when you were a guy? And I like that that's when we kind of stop. The stoplight stops. And that's when Ocarine realizes that the world lines are starting to merge. And Ocarine's like, ooh, I've caused some issues to happen. I've been waiting for Ocarine to kind of talk about this, to be like, if all of these changes are starting to be recognized by the characters that have had the changes happen to them, is that maybe one reason why Moeka's kind of messed up about FB? I don't know. We don't know what FB stands for or who FB is, but maybe that's one of the reasons that Moeka is messed up, because they can remember both timelines. Maybe, I don't know. She was taking pictures at the very beginning when we saw her because she was trying to remember things the way they were. Could she have been part of multiple timelines that have changed and she's remembering them? I don't know. He's like, this is exactly what happens with Faris. So from there, he's like, she's regaining memories from an earlier world line. I do like that he genders her right in the pronouns, at least for parts of this. So I don't know if the 3 little tin cups getting water have any significance. I don't know. And he's like, thank you for today. Or she says, thank you for today. Being my boyfriend made me so very happy. I feel so bad for them, though, because they are aware that things are about to change, right? And this is where the confession, as I give my dog this toy, this is where the confession gets really sad. Because they say, here's my mom's pager. And they're like, okay. And they run off. And that's when Ocarine, is really sad, because he's like, oh, well, was this all worth it? Was he really being the friend that he should have in this moment? And luckily, they decide to go back and redo the date, at least part of it. And they're like, we're all set. I love that shot. As much as I don't like seeing Ocarine sad, I do like that shot of him with the jacket off. And then it's when Mayuri says that you weren't yourself. So he goes back to the shrine. And then as it's sunset saying, it's Kioma. Have you forgotten my name, Rukako? All that male, female, boyfriend, girlfriend stuff. I was the one who was confused. None of that matters. I finally realized that I'm me and you're you, Rukaku, my pupil. I do like that part a lot. I do like him coming back and saying to Rukaku, being like, gender means nothing. Gender is a construct. The biological sex of either of us means nothing in the context of this. And it's a way of Ocarine being like, it's a way of Ocarine rejecting Ruka's proposal, but at the same time being like, look, I'm not into you romantically, but I'm your friend. You're my pupil. Let's keep having this relationship. I'm not leaving you. Our relationship is still intact and I still want it. And Ruka accepts that. They accept that. And so they do the training and all that. And everybody's like, all right, they're going to be okay. And then as it's dark, that's when we get the confession from Ruka. I keep waiting for it to happen. And now we're finally here. And they say that the IBM 5100 was in our storehouse until last New Year's Day. But I broke it while I was cleaning the storehouse. So here's kind of the crazy butterfly effect moment before we get... I keep waiting to get to the confession to talk with you all about that, but we're not there yet. In this world line, Ruka found the IBM 5100 and just randomly broke it. And that's why it's no longer there. So that answers a question from last episode, where I was like, who took the IBM 5100? In this world line, Ruka did. Ruka messed it up. Just like with the lotto numbers. Again, like the butterfly effect. Something getting messed up has to happen. And it's like... So that makes me wonder, like, even if they go back, like, it makes me think, even if they go back and change these other things, is it going to change Ruka damaging the IBM 5100? I don't know. They were cleaning the storehouse. So I'm like, is this going to be like a sexist sort of thing of, well, if she had been a man, she wouldn't have dropped the thing on the computer and broke it. I don't think that that's it at all. It just crossed my mind because, somebody would probably comment it. But yeah, they're like, I accidentally broke it in the storehouse. And it's my fault. I think I feel bad the most for Ruka so far in all of this, with the exception of like Ocarine and Mayuri and all that, because of all the characters, Ruka kind of is the one laden with the most guilt. I mean, Faris didn't really have guilt about saving her father. even at the end when she was like, I had all these great times, YOLO, with her dad, which you can't blame her. Ruka's been carrying a lot of guilt throughout this series, not only about their own identity, not only about like who they are and what they're doing and about their confession and their love for Ocarine, which we will talk about in a second, but they've also been carrying this guilt about the lottery number, about the storehouse and the IBM machine. Like, they're just... Ruka is like a tragic character in this story, and I kind of feel for them because they're like the one queer character that's identified in this, and we're going to talk about it, but like they're the one canonically identified queer character, and I'm like, all this bad stuff happens to them. I'm like, you know, why? So, and they're like, please, Okabe-san, please save my Yuri. Okabe's gaslit a lot of people about saving my Yuri and changing the future. It's not really gaslighting, but I'm glad I was able to train with you again. It's been so long. And Okarine's like, well, now wait a minute. It's like, oh, you're realizing something? Before I start crying, you need to leave. And I do like the light source. If we're talking about like lights equaling like moments of truth symbolically, we do have like the bug zapper, you know, night light, security light that's out above them. This is the perfect time for that secret phrase, isn't it? I have not heard El Sai Kongru since the beginning of this series. Honestly, it's only been like 10 episodes and it feels like an eon ago. It feels like an eon ago. El Sai Kongru. Damn. And that's when every character's going to reach up and grab Okabe's back. Every character's going to do it. Moika's going to do it at some point. Kurisu's probably going to do it. Mayuri's probably going to do it. Everybody's going to do it. He's like, I don't want to turn back. If I go back to being a boy, I'll have to seal away my feelings for you. So here's the confession. We finally can talk about it. We can finally get down to brass tacks with this. So Ruka reveals that one of the reasons they wanted to be female is because they had feelings for Ocarine. Now, there's a lot to say about this, and you could argue it either two ways. I mean, it could be that Ruka always wanted to be a woman, and that they always felt like they were a woman. They're transgender. They wanted to be female, and it was just like a bonus that society just happens to accept women in like heterosexual couples. So it was a bonus that while being a woman, they could confess their feelings. You could look at it that way. And up until this episode, that's kind of how I looked at it, right? Because for whatever reason in our society, I will never understand it. Like, we just can't accept it. It just, some cultures can't accept it. I feel like we've come a long way since 2011. We've come a long way. We don't need to go backwards. We need to only move forwards, accept people, and let people love whoever they want to love. Let people be whoever they want to be. It doesn't affect you. So it's like, if it doesn't affect you, F off. So yeah. But there is another way to look at this scenario. And my dog is like begging that I throw this toy behind me. The other way to look at this is that you can either view it as Ruka is transgender and has wanted to be, and that the Ocarine thing, dating, is a perk of that. But the other way of looking at it is that Ruka is maybe not transgender, but is gay and wanted to be able to confess to Ocarine, but because it's like when they first met Ocarine and Ocarine was so open-minded, they were like, oh, wow, I can, you're an open-minded person. I want to be friends with you. That's amazing. And then maybe as they were around them more, they were like, oh, well, I feel like they didn't really, it wasn't until these other new characters started to show up in the series and Ocarine was like, oh, well, that's, don't have a crush on, you cannot have a crush on Ruka because they're a guy. Once Ocarine started verbalizing that, that's actually around the time that Ruka started to vocalize that they wanted to become female biologically. So it seems like around that time, Ruka's like, I can't confess my love to you because societally here in Japan, it's not accepted. And they're like, I know you won't accept it back, but if I was a girl, maybe you would accept it. And I could tell that I had feelings for you. And it's really heartbreaking because it's basically them, having this like sexual crisis about their sexuality and being able to talk to Ocarine about it. And the sad thing is that Ocarine, because he's so inept at handling, Okarine's so inept at understanding romance and how to handle relationships, that he doesn't really have a positive or constructive answer to that. And it broke my heart whenever Ruka's like, as a boy, I won't be allowed to like you. And I'm like, that pisses me off. I'm like, why isn't this a yaoi? If this was a BL, we'd be all squared away. We'd be fine. But nope, we can't have nice things because it's 2011. And if I go back to being a boy, I'll forget today ever happened, won't I? That's the other heartbreaking thing. They won't remember it. It's so sad. I'll forget we went on a date and that we trained together again. The only thing that can come out of this, and that I can touch you the way I am now. The only thing is that Ocarina will remember all of this if his brain doesn't become scrambled eggs by the end of this series. So it is possible that Ocarina could treat Ruka in a more open-minded way in the future if they go back to help make amends for what has happened, right? It doesn't feel like Ocarina has really done much extra with Faris after this last episode, because Faris is back to the cafe and all that. But I would hope, now that Ocarina knows about Ruka's confession, that they go back and treat them a little bit with that in mind, right? But it's so heartbreaking. It's so sad. I should never wish to be one. And he's like, you'll always be Rukaku to me, even as a boy. It's like, you'll always be this. Nothing's going to change that. And Ruka's like, you're right. It's like you said, whether I'm a boy or a girl, none of that matters. Still, all I ask is that you remember me when I used to be a girl. That part is so sad. I'm like, He's like, I'm never going to forget. Never. And now we're to 52%. 52%. We jumped up a whole 7% with that one. Oh, buddy. And then we go back to the shrine as the D-mail is sent. And the sad part about all of this is the way that Ocarina checks is by asking them, tell me, Rukaku, do you like me? And the way he knows that Rukaku is a boy again is like, oh, well, I respect you. Which is really just, I don't want to say it's homophobic. I don't want to say that it's sad. It's mostly sad. I can't say that it's homophobic because there's not like the no homo aspect of it with Ocarina. Ocarina's just not attracted to Ruka at all. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what their gender is. There's no attraction there. But it's really sad that Ruka isn't allowed to have... It's sad either way, that Ruka's not allowed to be biologically female if that's what they want. It's sad that that's denied to them now. And it's also sad that they believe that they can't ever confess to Ocarina because society's not going to accept that. So sad. Luckily, this episode was not nearly as uncomfortable as I thought it was going to be. I thought this episode was going to be... I've waited... This episode is supposed to come out on Patreon on Saturday, and today is Thursday. So, I literally have waited till the last minute on this episode because I was so afraid. I had a feeling that Ruka is like, well, if you go down the timeline, Ruka's next. And I was so afraid this was going to be an uncomfortable episode. I was waiting till the last minute, and it wasn't uncomfortable. But it's just very sad. It's very sad. And it feels like, I feel like this dates the series so much because it's 14 years ago. I feel like it dates the series so much because so much has changed since then. And it just, I feel bad for Ruka. I feel bad for Ruka most of all. But we don't know a lot about Moeka. That's the thing. Moeka's next in line with changing that phone back. What if the phone company that is Moeka's phone is like FB? But I don't know. It's just Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg's been the enemy all along. But yeah, like I said, I feel like this discussion is a little all over the place because even though I feel like I'm under the rainbow spectrum, I am not. It's like imposter syndrome. I'm not the representative to talk about transgender identity or to talk about being gay. So Sound off down below how you felt about this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode for you. I really, really would, especially if you're part of the queer community. I would love to hear your thoughts because, especially if you watched this back in the day in 2011 when this came out, if you watched it back then, I want to know. I want to know thoughts. I want to know all the things because I felt with this episode a little woefully unprepared to discuss because I don't want to talk for someone. I don't be like, oh, the cisgender white girls talking about this. I'm like, I don't want to, yeah, not exactly the person, the Western girls talking about Japanese culture and all this. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. I would love to have a discussion about this. Would love that. So I was dreading this episode going into it, but it turned out to be just as bittersweet as I thought it would be, but a lot more streamlined than I imagined. So we let Whiteboard Kun have a break this week, but considering we have Moeka to deal with, I don't know if that's going to happen next week, y'all. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm going to be back real soon, and we're going to discuss episode 19 of Steins Gate. Bye!